r/AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit, what is the craziest thing that has happened in the teacher's lounge? I was an elementary school teacher in Japan for several years. I was once asked by a coworker what twerking was. The school's internet blocks you out to ban most video sites, unless you have special permission/reason to access it. Plus most twerking videos are a bit NSFW, so video was out of the question. Even if this had been a professional inquiry, I was forced to explain via demonstration. I described it in broken Japanese as a jiggly butt dance and then proceeded to give my best approximation of what it might look like. I think I did an okay job, all the while verbally reiterating that this is usually done in tight pants or a thong, in order to emphasize the jiggliness of the butt. One of my coworkers tried it out, but he was getting it all wrong. His twerking looked more like a weird hula dance, and I told him so. One of the other teachers was like, it's more in the hips, right? And actually did a decent job. Then a third teacher was like, what are you guys doing? And we then proceeded to re-explain what twerking was, and a couple minutes later, me and 4 other teachers in suits were twerking in the teacher's room with varying degrees of success. Not my proudest moment. Best part of my student teaching practicum, in the teacher's lounge during a free period. There is this nice little old lady teacher marking papers while I make some coffee. Nice and quiet, yeah no? Then all of a sudden she slams her pen on the table and yells, you call that a fucking thesis statement? Also, bitch, and bitch. Gossip about students and other teachers. I became so disgusted over the behavior that I started hanging out in the janitor's room, to which I found out became the new topic of gossip in the teacher's lounge. Whatever, I was never out of supplies and my room was always spotlessly cleaned. And that's what happens in the teacher's lounge. Mr. L was microwaving some leftover fish for his lunch. Mr. D comes in and says it stinks in here. Who would microwave old stinky fish? Mr. L waits for his fish to finish microwaving, then takes it to an empty corner, but is too bitter after the encounter to enjoy a single bite of it. I was a sub for a few months before I left for the Navy. Back then, I didn't actually need to do anything but take a 2-day class to be a sub. $50 a day is pretty good, ick now? Anyway, the craziest thing that happened in the teacher's lounge was a principal dressing down a teacher who was adamant about getting more desks in her classroom because half her students in 2 of her 3 classes didn't have one. The principal told her that if she wanted the desks so bad, she should consider stripping instead. He was removed sometime after. Turns out he was stealing from the school. I work in a language school. We eat sandwiches and talk about how terrible our students are. Occasionally we'll get into a heated argument about some usage vs actual grammar thing. Other times we'll play some sort of pass the time game. Celebrities who should have been arch nemesis was one. Clint Eastwood vs Vivienne Westwood. Keira Knightley vs Tom Doyle. Stephen Merchant vs Marvin Hagler. Stuff like that. Teachers aren't exciting people during teacher time. Not crazy, but just a weird lunchtime story. I was hired during my time student teaching to work as a long-term sub for a fellow science teacher going on maternity leave. While working, I would chat with the new science student teacher during lunch. One day, he and I are sitting having lunch, and he pulls out some string cheese with an excited oh yeah. He's feeling off pieces while we are talking, when the bell suddenly rings. His eyes go wide as he realizes he is only about a third of the way done with this innocent piece of his childhood he is enjoying. He says, I can't let the kids see me eating this. They'll never let me live it down. So he decides to finish it in fast forward, not taking larger strips, not biting it like some lamb wannabe mozzarella stick, but peeling off thin strands super quickly and shoving them into his mouth. Probably some of the quirkiest behavior I saw during my time there. Oh, finally one for me. I used to work at a special edition public school up in Harlem where most of the kids were extremely emotionally disturbed. One day, one of the kids threw a textbook out the window of his 3rd floor classroom and it landed on a teacher's BMW that was parallel parked in front of the school, denting the hood. The teacher went apeshit, locked himself in the teacher's lounge, and proceeded to throw/break every piece of furniture in the room. When he finally came out, the chairs were in pieces, the tabletop was laying on the floor, and both the microwave and the refrigerator's doors were ripped off. Some of us helped to clean up, and sure enough, he had thrown the table legs and the door to the microwave out the window, damaging another teacher's car. Guy didn't get punished at all and was seen as a hero to the kids. My time to shine. During my internship, on THR first day I went into the teacher lounge for lunch. The teachers were talking about how drunk they got during the weekend. 2 of them ended up losing their pants during the night and walked home/took a cab home. At my current school they talked about how they passed out on the lawn during a block party. In fact that happened today. Us social studies persons are rampant alcoholics. Also lots of discussions about certain students. To be fair, this is often about why a student is THR way they are. You'd be surprised about how many students crave male attention because they don't have a dad, or that they were abused as kids, or whatever. Bottom line is we care about students. It's our job. We don't have to like them, but we care about them all. A few years ago I stayed late to finish high school report cards in the staff room. I was bored and needed something to do. A few other teachers came in with some of those pink mist phone call message pads. And an idea formed. A mildly gullible friend of mine, we'll call her Rochelle, at the high school was working with troubled girls who needed credits. The girls were in co-op courses throughout the city, nursing homes, retirement residences, kitchens, etc. And Rochelle was frequently complaining how difficult it was to keep the girls from being fired from the co-op placements. It was very difficult for her to find them sustainable employment. So, instead of working on my report card comments that night, I looked up the number for an escort service called Beth's. I wrote a note for my friend to please call Beth about potential co-op placements using my left hand, so my friend wouldn't recognize my writing on one of the missed call slips. Great prank. I then forgot all about it and finished those report cards. 2 days later, I heard from a friend of a friend on staff that something hilarious had happened to Rochelle. Apparently, she had called Beth asking about co-op placements for the girls. A deep male voice had answered the phone saying, "This is Beth." According to the friend who relayed the story, Rochelle argued with Beth that no, she needed to speak to the real Beth about co-op placements. Rochelle also shared that she was calling from a high school and that it was important for the girls to have co-op experience and to get credits. I guess it was finally poor Beth who put 2 and 2 together and told Rochelle that this was a prank and she was calling an escort service. Apparently, Rochelle couldn't believe it. 7 years later, I have still never owned up to Rochelle that I did that. Hehe. Years ago when I taught at community college, one of our profs was caught having sex with a student in the lounge. He had previously been caught masturbating in there and was warned. Turns out he had a tumor which was pressing on some important part of his brain related to inhibition. Once we learned of his diagnosis, it explained a lot, like his not being ashamed of being caught and all the bragging he used to do. He was back at work after it was removed. Thankfully it was benign and back to his normal inconspicuous quiet self. Our lunch break is called sister lunch because somehow all the male teachers and the female teachers all have separate lunches. Mostly we chat about our kids at home, not students, and what we are doing for the weekend. The only crazy thing was at my other school at the beginning of the year, when we didn't have enough comfy chairs, we would race each other down the hallway to lay claim. Then we stole a couch from the student lounge, so now everyone is happy. I taught in a school very near the Colorado border for a few years. After they legalized weed, one of my co-workers, a lady around the age of 60, said she was going to Pueblo to visit her son. The next thing I knew, there were about 5 middle school teachers throwing wads of cash at this woman and asking her to bring them back the goods. She delivered. I had been to Colorado the week before, so I was all set. I was just relishing the newfound information that a significant portion of my co-workers like to get high. Source: family of teachers, and I'm a youth worker in college for education. The most shocking thing about the teachers' lounge is that it is almost identical to every other break room on the planet. Teachers' conversations range from sex, to drugs, to family, and work-oriented topics. The kicker being that the person in the classroom often will take off the teacher's mask when they walk in. So sweet little milliseconds. Sally, who looks and acts like a saint and an angel outside, is talking about hitching with a friend of a friend. You get a glimpse of it when you meet a teacher outside of the school out in the community. The kids I work with, 16 to 18, were shocked when they saw me at the grocery store with a 12-pack of beer. Oh boy, my mom's a kindergarten teacher, so here's a story on behalf and an appreciation of her, because I'll never understand how this woman has tolerated all she has. This may not be the craziest tale she's ever told me from her job, but it's been nearly 6 years since it happened, and it's bad enough to still be burned into my mind. It's 4:30 in the afternoon, school has been out for 2 hours, a bit over halfway through the year, and my mom is in the teacher's lounge grading her kids' progress assessments. A really young teacher's assistant had just started this year, numbly shuffles in with this vacant, "My soul has left my body and all hope in the world is dead to me" look, and quietly tells my mom she's needed in the vice principal's office. My mom instantly knows something's up, because the school system by itself can't crush spirits that effectively. So she replies, "I'm almost done with my assessments, I'll be there in a few minutes." Teacher's assistant just folds into a chair and tells her, "No, you need to be there now." We now have my mother on her way to the VP's office, 30-second walk from the lounge. About halfway there, she stops. The entire hall reeks of shit. VP is just standing outside of her office and nods to my mom like, "Yeah, this is for us," with her shirt pulled to cover her nose. So they walk in, and it's one of her students' moms standing there fucking immune to the shit stench, and with a smug "you're getting fired" grin on her face. Mom is by the doorway and VP is sitting behind her desk when this woman pulls out of her purse and drops onto it a diaper full of shit which spatters on and ruins most of the papers and everything already there. It's her son's. Note, kindergarten kids are 5 to 6 years old and are supposed to be fucking potty trained well before this point in time. Excrement from that day. Woman's mouth unhinges in snake-like fashion. Banshee screaming floods the building with the deafening sounds of "This is my son's, look at what you did. I specifically told you when school began he can't have chocolate milk. Why did you give it to him? Why didn't you clean him? I'm become shit. The destroyer of pants bring heel upon me as the rivers flow red with the blood of virgins," which carries on for all of the 3 minutes it took for the school cop to remove her from the premises. It also turns out that was a refined V2.0, and before she made it to the VP's office she had unleashed her shrieks of misfortune upon the tar mentioned earlier, ripping her soul from the mortal flesh it clung to, because she had seen her in my mom's classroom helping this one time a few months back. Both the tar and VP quit. The tar within the next few weeks, and the VP after the year ended. They didn't change schools or anything, they just knew they would never regain the selves that they once were after that incident, and couldn't continue in education. Mom kept on trucking though. Just moved to a new school this year too. Hope things work out for her. I was a substitute teacher for many schools, grades kindergarten through high school. I was shocked at how much gossip and shit talking goes on in there. It's basically like high school. They talk crap about the kids, make fun of things that happened in class, and talk about how drunk they were over the weekend. It was like this in almost every school I subbed for. My time to shine. Years ago when I taught at community college, one of our profs was caught having sex with a student in the lounge. He had previously been caught masturbating in there and was warned. Turns out he had a tumor which was pressing on some important part of his brain related to inhibition. Once we learned of his diagnosis it explained a lot, like his not being ashamed of being caught and all the bragging he used to do. He was back at work after it was removed. Thankfully it was benign, and back to his normal inconspicuous quiet self. First school I worked at, it was really just general conversation. Maybe someone would tell a story about college or shit talk a kid. That's the wildest I suppose. Current school, it's pure silence during lunch as we all are on our phones. It's amazing. Probably sounds terrible to outsiders, but honestly when you've been listening to kids bullshit for the entire day, silence is fucking golden. My wife used to be a paraprofessional before going back to school full time. She was very close with the first grade teacher. On the last day of school before Christmas break they were asked to clear out the lunch refrigerator. They just took a Sharpie and dated everything as the first day back from break. No one questioned why all the food went bad on the same day. Teachers basically don't give a shit the day before vacations. Another time the second grade teacher, who everyone hated, was bitching about kids liking shows like Jake and the Neverland Pirates. Basically she was mad pirates were being glorified, even though they were thieves and murderers. The principal heard this and made sure to make national talk like a pirate day, a big costume day in school, because he hated her back talk and staff meetings. Two of my fellow teachers and I were discussing the 2 girls, 1 cup video. I had never even heard of it before, but the other 2 people had. They just hadn't seen it. One had only seen reaction videos of people watching the video, and he said based on that, it had to be some crazy shit. So we watched the video. We were all in our 20s, while regular conversation happened around us. People ate their lunch, graded papers, etc. We had a really cool principal back then. He used to break rules and do things like smoke cigarettes in his office all the time. So we got away with a lot of stuff back then. When he retired, the new principal put blocks and filters on all the computers in the school, not just the ones for the students. When I was working at school, I only went to the staff room like twice, but the first time I was in there, another guy who was working there, we were both on experience, unpaid, W/E you want to call it. It went a little bit like this. Kid who was also in our year group got put in a coma the other day. Me, well, it doesn't really affect me. Hopefully he came out of it, but he's a bit of a dick, like. Yeah, true. I'm not bothered that much either. Hopefully he'll get out of it though. It can't be nice. Every other person in there mumbles in agreement. Funniest/saddest moment. Several of us were in the lounge eating lunch, inhaling lunch. 20-minute shift. It was Friday, Akajean's Day. We had a science teacher who had spent a few years teaching at an American school in the Republic of Niger and was wearing a Niger football, soccer, jersey. The dumbass, jock, former pet teacher, semi-pro football player, principal, yes, I'm generalizing, judging, etc. comes in and says, in all seriousness, Mr. S, you really need to change your shirt. That is not appropriate. Mr. S replied, because it says Niger, a county in Africa. The dumbass just grunted and walked out. We then lost it. Many teachers have left that school because of that principal, but that's another story. Thanks for watching UpGoat Reddit. Try like and subscribe button if it still works.